His Divine Grace, Sri Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada, Shri Radha Govardhana Dhani, Krishna Balaram, Lord Gira, Shri Goni Tai Ki Jai, Nitai Gaura Premanandi, all glories to some Gurus, all glories to Sri Guru, Sri Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hey, from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 10, Text 51. Sutta Uvacha Rakya Parikshita Kristo Yadavachan Mahamuni Taddo vidyasye srinuta rakya prashnanusha ataha sutavacha rakya parikshita pisto yadavochan mahamuni taddo vidyasye shrutya srinuta rakya prashnanusha ata sutavacha rakya prikshita pisto yadavochan mahamuni taddo vidyasye srinuta rakya krishnanusharata. Sutavacha, Sri Sutta Goswami said, rakya by the king, parikshita by Pariksit, prishta as asked, yat what, avochat spoke, Mahamuni the great sage, tat that very thing, va unto you, avidyasye I shall explain, Shrinuta please hear, Ragya by the king, Krishna question, Anusharataha in accordance with. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki. Translation, Sri Sutta Goswami explained, I shall now explain to you the various subjects explained by the great sage in answer to King Parikshit's inquiries. Please hear them attentively. For any question that is put forward may be answered by quoting the authority, and that satisfies the sameness section. That is the system even in the lower court. The best lawyer gives evidence from the past judgment of the court without taking much trouble to establish his case. This is called the parampara system, and learned authorities follow it without manufacturing rubbish interpretations. Let us all obey the Supreme Lord, whose hand is in everything, without exception. Om Adhyanamarandasya. So we're just coming into this section of the Bhagavatam dealing with Vidura. Vidura, King Dhritarashtra, he foolishly thought he could steal the kingdom from their rightful heirs, the Pandavas, and place his own son Duryodhana on the throne. But when he was advised by his younger brother Vidura that his plan was doomed to failure, he wasn't very happy with that advice. And this eventually led to Vidura being insulted and driven out of the palace. However, Vidura wasn't so disturbed by that. He simply took, being a pure devotee of the Lord, he simply took that event, and any event that happens in life is simply the Lord's arrangement. And so he began traveling on holy pilgrimage. He went to all these different amazing holy places, bathing in all. He took the garb of just a mendicant, and he was visiting all these saintly people. Because eventually he met Uddhava, the great and dear devotee of the Lord. And Uddhava advised him, actually he wanted to take shelter of Uddhava, but Uddhava's a lot younger than Vidura. So Uddhava, in using proper etiquette, he advised him to take shelter of Maitreya Rishi. and accept him as a spiritual master. And Maitreya and Rishi was much older. Because Uddhava and Maitreya were both personally instructed by the Lord in the transcendental science of devotional service. They're both very qualified personalities. So, this Maharaj Pritha, he was very anxious to know the meaningful discussions that took place between Vidura and Maitreya. And of course in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna tells us, if you just try to learn the truth by approaching a spiritual master, inquire from him submissively, render service unto him, the self-realized soul can impart knowledge unto you because he has seen the truth. And Prabhupada explains that in that purport, that, due to our past material conditionings and the influences of this present age, the path of spiritual realization, it's not so easy to follow. Therefore, Krishna advises us to approach a bona fide spiritual master. And of course, Krishna is the original, he's the original spiritual master and the ultimate source of all knowledge. And he revealed this wisdom to Lord Brahma, the first created being in this material universe. And of course, that happened just prior to this creation. And from Brahma, this Vedic wisdom has descended from one master to another, right down to us today. So this is called the descending knowledge. And, Prabhupada mentions another section of Bhagavatam that, naturally, a philosophically minded person, he wants to know about the origin of creation. He wants to know, who am I? What's my spiritual real identity beyond this body and mind? Who is God? What happens at the time of death? What's the ultimate purpose to life? What knowledge can solve the world's problems? What's the ultimate formula for achieving ultimate happiness? So Prabhupada mentioned, because these things cannot be understood, through just mental speculation, mundane scholarship, material intelligence, Krishna advises that one should approach a bona fide spiritual master. And as said, he is the real key to open this great treasure house of wisdom. So, many of us have come to realize this, and especially through these bhakti teachings, we've come to realize that trying to define this world using our own flawed perception definitely isn't the best process for trying to understand things as they are. So in our Bhakti tradition, we learn about another process for receiving knowledge. This descending process, which is mentioned here. Knowledge coming down from a divine source. And this means hearing from a bona fide or a genuine spiritual master or guru who himself has heard and received the knowledge from a bona fide spiritual master. And that master, he heard it from his master. And that master, he heard it from his master. And that spiritual master, he heard it from his master. In this way, if you go up and up and up, going back in time and history, you'll come to the original spiritual master and guru, which is the Supreme Lord himself. He's the very source of all knowledge. So this descending process of receiving knowledge is said to be the best and most perfect way of receiving knowledge. Prabhupada mentions that we can only really know something of the unlimited when it's explained and revealed by the unlimited, or those who are intimately connected to the Supreme Unlimited. So a bona fide spiritual master, he's specifically empowered by the Lord to enlighten us and elevate our consciousness and bless us with genuine spiritual understanding. The Vedic literatures explain that most people cannot access this knowledge because it's very, very hard to find a guru who is a genuine seer of the truth. Such a guru who is fully qualified, is a great soul, he's very rare, and only those who follow his teachings can actually realize the truth and become expert in the science of self-realization. So it is said, if someone is sincerely wanting to know the absolute truth, Krishna, he can direct you from within to a bona fide spiritual master, or those connected to a spiritual master. And many of us had that experience, we had some desire there. We had some calling to understand the deeper meaning to our life. And somehow or other, we got a book, or we met a devotee, or someone brought us to a temple, or we got connected. Krishna directed us from within the heart to take, so, he said, by the mercy of the Supreme Lord, one gets a bona fide guru, and it's by the mercy of the bona fide guru that one gets the Supreme Lord. So it's, many people ask us, how do you know who is a bona fide guru? You talk about bona fide gurus, genuine gurus. How do you know who's a bona fide guru and who's not? So in our Bhakti school, it teaches us one of the qualifications of a bona fide spiritual master. He simply always presents himself as a humble servant or devotee of the Supreme Lord. He encourages everyone to be devoted to the Supreme Lord, for everyone to try and understand and learn to love the Supreme Lord. He'll never say that you yourself are God or he himself is God. He simply teaches others how to love and serve the Supreme Lord. This is the Supreme, because there's so many gurus. I remember back in the 70s, it was just like this influx of gurus coming from India into the Western world. And I know myself, I used to hang out, I was like on a bit of a spiritual search, traveling around, I was hanging out with the different spiritual groups, who were following different gurus. And actually I became very disillusioned actually with the spiritual scene as it was. And when I'd almost given up hope, I somehow or other, by Krishna's arrangement, I met the devotees. and as soon as I met them, I thought, wow, this is it. This is not just a fashion or just a club, a spiritual club that meet once a week or something, but this is actually a whole spiritual culture and lifestyle backed up by this incredible deep philosophy that just answers every single question you ever had. It was great. So, it's this bona fide spiritual master. We don't always have the opportunity to directly associate with our spiritual master. Sometimes the spiritual master may have already left this world. And sometimes spiritual masters are travelling everywhere, and some of them may have thousands of disciples. Sometimes it's not easy to get the direct association of the spiritual master to take instructions, and even some disciples, they don't always, if they have some problem, they don't want to they're just a bit embarrassed to actually want to show the spiritual master that they're not really, perhaps up to the standard or following the standard, the highest standard or whatever, But, there's always devotees, too, that we can take shelter of. Senior devotees. As we go through different phases of life, we're always faced with new challenges in life, aren't we? If you're a young boy or a young girl, you may decide to join the Hare Krishnas, and live in the ashram. So there's always so many new challenges to be faced when you join the ashram as a new bhakta or bhakti. And after some time, you may decide to get married. Once again, so many new challenges. Then you may become a parent. That's full of so many challenges. Then the children become teenagers, which puts so many more challenges upon you. And then because, sometimes the men, sometimes people take vanaprastha. It's like a whole new set of challenges for the husband and wife. And then the husband, he may take sannyas even, which is in a whole other set of challenges. So, there's always be someone who has already had so much more experience in dealing with these particular challenges than we have, and all the different stages of life. Therefore, naturally, we should seek guidance and advice from such people. It's a sign of intelligence, a good intelligence. We could save ourselves by making so many mistakes and going through what they call the school of hard knocks. If we would just willingly take shelter and ask for guidance and good advice. Even amongst, senior devotees and older devotees and advanced devotees, even among God brothers or God sisters and peers, there's always somebody who is a little stronger, more experienced, more advanced than we are. But it takes some, humility to recognize this, revealing one's mind and confidence. It's one of the loving exchanges between devotees. So this is the process. And Rupa Goswami in his Nectar of Devotion, he mentions this, it reveals the deeper meaning of this, that the confidentiality is centered around the Lord and our devotional service to Him. We're meant to inquire from more experienced devotees how to improve ourselves, how to improve our spiritual practices, our devotional service to Krishna's devotees. And that's learn from more advanced devotees. It's all a part of growing in Krishna consciousness and advancing. But it takes some humility to really approach someone and take shelter. Humility is said to be the emblem of a sincerely surrendered bhakti yogi. And true humility happens naturally when for one who understands his true spiritual identity is an insignificant, eternal servant of the Supreme Lord. So humility, we see this first, Vidura, he's come to take shelter of Maitreya Muni. And, so humility can also be manifested in being inquisitive, asking questions. A proud person, somebody who's very proud, he will always feel they know everything. Thus there's no need to approach a senior person for advice and guidance. So, when we look into the scriptures, we see that inquisitiveness, this asking for advice and guidance, doesn't mean we just have a question. It means much more than that. That true inquisitiveness it's like a state of the heart. We're actually genuinely feeling helpless. We're feeling, there's this deep urge and longing in the heart to hear and understand how to overcome our impediments on the path of devotional service. And we read this in the Bhagavatam, how inquisitiveness means to hear with rapt attention on the level of the body, the mind, the heart. That it's only then that the words, they really go in there, enter the heart, and transform the heart. It only happens when the heart is open and receptive to receive the messages. We see this Vidura, he's like the perfect disciple in approaching Maitreya Muni. Of course, Srila Prabhupada also mentions, that in regards to approaching the spiritual master, if one is not very inquisitive, if one is not really sincerely desiring to understand the truth about self-realization, one need not approach a spiritual master, simply to make a show of discipleship. In other words, if one's not really genuinely, sincerely inquisitive, this is mentioned, you see this Vidura, he's really genuinely inquisitive. But if hasn't got that genuine inquisitive nature, then Prabhupada said our acceptance of a guru may be simply a show, a kind of a fashion, or a social convention. My friend has a guru. So I think I'll get a guru, or I just want to be known as a disciple. It's like, and we see that at the time of initiation. It's a very important stage in life. When you take initiation from a guru, accept a guru, and accepting it means you've decided. Mahatma was explaining this the other day when he was initiating the Srimad Chaitanya, that one has to. This is what I want to do with my whole life. You give it to Krishna. So we see that the spiritual master, he's always prepared to impart knowledge to a disciple or aspiring disciple. Specifically, the disciple is very inquisitive. Inquisitive is a part of a disciple that is necessary for a progressive disciple. Actually we hear the story about Prabhupada, when he used to go and the times when he went and visited Bhaktisiddhanta in the beginning. Bhaktisiddhanta marked, he was very, very listening very attentively. So unless we have this humble attitude towards guru or any senior devotee who is senior to us, it's very difficult to hear from them. The mind will always object, why is this person trying to instruct me? I know what's best for me. See, I know much more on this topic than they do. It's a very difficult situation. Actually, even Devamuda Swami was telling us that, generally the Vaishnava etiquette is when the guru tries to instruct the disciple will just accept those instructions and take them as his life and soul. But he said the modern trends of today is that the guru can't always just instruct the disciple. The disciple always wants to feel that he made his own decisions about what he wants to do in his life. So not always not easy to be a guru, especially when the disciples are not very receptive or haven't got that attitude of surrender. Because if the right mood isn't there, it means when instructions, corrections, chastisements, encouragement, even inspiration and other means of elevation come our way, if we maintain an arrogant attitude rather than benefit from such things, we won't like it. We'll feel uncomfortable, unsettled, even rebel against such advice. Just do our own thing. So, the Bhagavad Gita is teaching us this, that we should approach our seniors in a humble state of mind, inquire from them, render humble service. Thus we'll be in the right frame of mind to hear. And we see this as this whole canto evolves, we'll see this. This is the real mood of a doer in approaching Maitreya Rishi. So this service to the devotees is a great blessing that it attracts Krishna's mercy to us. Although the spiritual master, we see, if we get the opportunity to personally serve the spiritual master, he may graciously accept our service. But, we also want to try and serve the devotees. Sometimes if we try and serve a senior devotee, they may feel uncomfortable to accept our personal service. But we can always assist them in their service. So it's another important thing, we see that when asking questions, it's an art, asking relevant questions that are meaningful when you're inquiring. We should avoid simply asking irrelevant questions or questions for the sake of simply asking questions, without being sincerely inquisitive or having a genuine real problem or difficulty or a question that really needs to be addressed to the spiritual master or to the senior devotee. It's also said we should avoid asking questions in a challenging attitude. Sometimes the false ego makes us believe that we are most intelligent, that I know everything already, and that we try and maintain this proud attitude towards the speaker. And we see that sometimes this happens. And even this pride and arrogance when inquiring can also manifest in a display of, even irrelevant interrogation. In the name of inquiry, someone may inappropriately interrogate a senior in a subtle way just to try and think themselves more senior or in a superior position, demanding an answer. So there's a proper mood, a proper way of asking questions. Sometimes people just want to bring attention to themselves and show how intelligent they are or how learned they are. So sincerely inquisitive persons, it's kind of like they serve the speaker by drawing more information and transcendental knowledge from them. Giving them an opportunity to share their personal realizations and their personal knowledge. So, on the other side of the coin, when we look at our materialistic culture, material life and its culture, it's all about, showing off. The more one can show off, the more successful one is considered to be. People rather than inquiring from others, they rather enjoy talking about themselves, hearing themselves speak, chanting their own glories, boasting their own activities and achievements, than simply inquiring from others. Actually, it's amazing because we see that materialistic culture, it's almost diametrically opposed to traditional Vedic culture. In that materialistic culture, even to inquire about something is almost regarded as a sign of stupidity, or that someone is very foolish. Everyone likes to make a show of knowing everything, don't they? This way people like to impress each other how knowledgeable they are about what they've achieved in life. People are really, from trying to inquire from others or to approach others. If someone has a problem or some difficulty in life, is said to be a sign of weakness, a sign of being incompetent, inexperienced, even ignorant, as an embarrassment. People even feel ashamed that they admit that they don't know something. It's funny, when you're many of you who've lived in India probably know that. If you have to get directions from someone in India, like you have to know when the train station is or whatever, if they don't know, they'll just tell you anything because they don't want to feel stupid about not knowing, right, the proper direction. So they just tell you anything. You end up going somewhere that's not even the right place. And also, as far as giving knowledge and giving support to people, in the materialistic culture, people feel burdened if someone tries to come to them and inquire from them. They consider themselves, too busy. They'd rather focus on their own agendas, their own goals in life, than spend their valuable time bothering about others' questions and others' problems and difficulties. That's their relationships. They always remain like self-centered and impersonal. So this conditioning is very deep and subtle. And thus, it can also enter into spiritual practice. But this whole materialistic attitude and frame of mind, it's really, as I said, it's just diametrically opposed to traditional Vedic etiquette and culture. Ultimately, we understand in our bhakti school that there's no meaning to the concept of taking shelter unless it's based on a feeling of this helplessness. This feeling of helplessness is one of the most important qualities to cultivate in order to be able to sincerely take shelter. To take shelter of the holy name, to take shelter of Krishna, the process of Krishna consciousness, to take shelter of the Guru, also to take shelter of the Vaishnavas. So unless we feel this helplessness and this inquisitiveness to try and improve our spiritual life and inquisitive to ask questions and get guidance, we won't feel this need to take shelter of more experienced Vaishnavas. And we see that, sometimes some devotees, they have a lot of problems. They might have a problem, a very difficult problem, even very senior devotees. And but they don't seek out someone for guidance and shelter and instruction. And sometimes they just even fall away from Krishna consciousness. So, in all stages of life, in the very early stages, intermediate stages, even in the very advanced stages of Krishna consciousness, we have to really feel that need to ask for advice and guidance and shelter of the devotees who are around us. And specifically, in ISKCON we had this mentor. We did start it here, but it didn't really last. But it's like each devotee has a mentor. Just like a devotee friend who's in a more perhaps senior position than ourselves, who we can confide in, who we can talk very confidentially to. We can, and we see that even in very senior devotees, even sannyasis, gurus, even GBC devotees, they have these, like a mentor, someone they can confide in, get inspiration, get some support. The reality is, as we make more advancement, as our false ego becomes more and more subdued and ultimately dissolved, we start realizing how powerful Maya is. And how tiny and insignificant we are. And these feelings of helplessness will actually grow. This feeling of more dependence on Krishna and the Guru and the Vaishnavas. Actually, we see so many amazing songs in the songbook that Goswamis, very advanced devotees, and they're just expressing this mood of utter helplessness. Just as that poem that Srila Prabhupada wrote when he arrived. I think was it when he arrived or when he was on the boat? When he was expressing, was it Makhan? Yeah, it's just this total, a state of helplessness and dependent on Krishna and the holy name and the Parampara and the cyclic succession and his spiritual master. So the longer we practice devotional service, the more we realize how much we're dependent on the mercy of the devotees around us, and the mercy of the spiritual master, the mercy of Krishna. And of course, it's just being in the association of devotees is such an important thing. That's what really charges our spiritual batteries, gives us great inspiration in our spiritual life to associate with spiritually minded friends who share our spiritual aspirations. And therefore it's one of the very important pillars in spiritual life that we can take shelter of. We get the association of devotees. And Prabhupada, he said, many different purports about this is why the Hare Krishna movement was created. Just to give people an opportunity to associate with devotees and learn about this process of devotional service. And see, it's a great boon. We knew the story about was Dhruva Maharaj. And he was asked, he was given the opportunity to ask for any boon. And he said, just give me the boon that birth after birth I can just, somehow or other I'll get the association of devotees of you. He considered that the most important thing in spiritual life. That's I'll just finish here. Does anyone have any questions they'd like to ask? Yeah. Yeah, just it's interesting, we're talking about taking shelter of the spiritual master, and we see that in the Vedic literature. We see that we find the definition of an acharya or a spiritual master is stated: an acharya is one who fully understands the conclusions of the revealed scriptures, and his behaviour reflects his deep realizations. That he's a living example, for he teaches the meaning of the scriptures both by word and by deed. It means the genuine spiritual master, his life is based on the teachings of the revealed scriptures. As I say, he walks the talk. He doesn't just talk the talk, he walks the talk. So in the Bhakti school, we learn that the secret of success in making spiritual advancement lies in always endeavouring to please the spiritual master. Yeah? It means always carrying out his instructions, word for word, serving him favourably as he desires to be served. It said a disciple who becomes very dear to the spiritual master or beloved to the spiritual master through good behaviour, through obedience, meekness, unhesitating service. Also special endeavours to try and help spread the spiritual master's mission, the Sankirtan mission. And also just by possessing a sober, serious and sincere attitude towards this process of bhakti yoga, Krishna consciousness. It is said that a sincere disciple, they never think themselves independent of their spiritual master. And they by always remembering that to surrender or to truly honour the spiritual master means to carry out their instructions word for word. Actually, the very word disciple means one who accepts the disciplinary action given by the spiritual master. And so sometimes the spiritual master may chastise the disciple or correct him. However, a sincere disciple, he understands and appreciates that the duty of the spiritual master is to train and discipline his disciples. Always understanding that spiritual master, he always only has our best interest at heart. So Prabhupada, he once said that a spiritual master, when a disciple is chastised by the spiritual master, actually he feels pleasure. And actually he mentioned in one discussion that sometimes, I think once Bhaktisiddhanta pulled him up on something. And Prabhupada said, I felt so much pleasure in my heart when I heard that. So also it is said, that in order to accidentally commit offences to one's guru, the scriptures advise us we should always be careful not to become too over-familiar with the guru. Not too over-familiar, too friendly, taking him for granted. That for our own good we should maintain a fearful attitude and endeavour to always show the highest respect in the presence of the guru. So this means that we shouldn't simply see one's guru from a materialistic point of view. We should not treat him, he should not be treated as an ordinary man, even if he sometimes behaves like an ordinary man. It means that the disciple should focus on the internal features of the spiritual master, how he's engaged in devotional service, how he's so dear to Krishna, how he's specifically empowered by Krishna, how he's sacrificing his life to try and push on the Sankirtan movement of Lord Chaitanya. But sometimes it happens. Sometimes being heavily influenced by the powerful, deluding material energy, a foolish disciple even may become impudent and dare to criticize the activities of the spiritual master or try to instruct him against his wish. So this type of offence is very detrimental to one's spiritual progress. Sometimes, we talk about receiving the mercy of the spiritual master. We should be begging for the mercy of the spiritual master. And sometimes actually some devotees, they get into this misconception that it's by the mercy of the spiritual master that everything happens, that I make spiritual advancement, that I don't have to do anything. The spiritual master does everything and I don't really need to endeavour so much in my spiritual life. But it's not, we also have to show our sincerity by endeavouring to really practice our Krishna consciousness very sincerely. And the spiritual master's mercy, actually, it is always there in the form of opportunities to practice devotional service in the association of devotees. His mercy comes, we have opportunities to chant the holy name, receive transcendental knowledge through the parampara, opportunities to please Krishna by spreading his Sankirtan mission. There's so many instructions there, so much guidance. So the spiritual master's mercy it's already there. We just have to be clever enough to recognise it's there, receive it, and just apply it in our daily life and practice it. Take advantage of it. Okay. Just finish it. Srila Prabhupada ki. Srimad Bhagavatam Krishna Ram Navira Shishi Garuda.